All right. Hello and welcome back. This is Colin Keeley here.
And I'm Brent Sanders.
And we're two guys buying and building wonderful internet companies.
Yeah. And then it's probably been a couple weeks since the last time we recorded and wanted to get something down on tape. Can't really say on tape, on record of kind of what's been going on and what we've been up to. I guess the one thing that has been going on is I feel like our team has been getting a lot better, right? Like things are gelling, at least on the Scout side of things, except everybody's kind of running into personal issues. Everyone has stuff, but it's been nice to see everybody kind of help each other out. So, we have a team there's some people in the Philippines, people in South America, people here in Cleveland, Austin, right? And things have been happening with the team personally that, people have to take days off, and it's been really nice to see everybody kind of chipping in extra time in order to make their schedule more flexible, which has been nice to see. It makes, as you put a team together, it's nice to see like everyone kind of gelling together and helping each other out and covering for one another. And that's probably like the only big update on the portfolio side of things, other than just things do continue to grow. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I think I saw your last update is everything's kind of still incrementally growing, moving upwards and progressing well.
Yeah. Well, so we do investor updates once a month, which is pretty high level. It's just like the financials, the MRR, and basically bullet points on what was done last month, what's working, what's not, which investors seem to really appreciate. Highly recommend doing that. It's good, accountability just generally. But yeah, on people issues. So we have a number of employees at the burn companies, and then at Jules, it's like a lot of what we do is staffing. So technically we are employing these people and we're making some profit on top of that. And at scale, it's just like endless random issues come up, just human. So it's like there's car accidents, there's deaths in families. People are always trying to get better jobs. So you have almost extortion of your clients where it's like, I'm going to leave unless you give me a pay increase. But it is just endless people issues I see.
Yeah. Yeah. How involved are you in that? Because, as I think I mentioned on our last pod, it's like people keep asking about, oh yeah, I see you guys are doing the staffing thing. I'm like, I guess I don't really do it. That's more Colin's bag. That's your thing. I mean, it seems like it's growing well, right? Like from what I've heard from you, we talked about it a little bit last week. How is that going?
Yeah, it's going well and it's growing. As far as how involved I am, I have a good person that kind of runs recruiting now. So he's always hiring and testing new recruiters. And then I have a person that basically runs sales. So between the two of them, they interact and they basically run the business. And I kind of keep on top of things and I watch the, cash payments. And then occasionally I'll tweet it out or I'll post in my newsletter. But that's really the extent of my involvement, and probably the extent of it kind of going forward is when we have extra capacity, I'll send a few tweets and I'll keep them busy for a time.
Nice.
But yeah, it's, gotten to the point that it's self-sufficient. I'm certainly not out there recruiting anyone or talking with clients.
Sure. Cool. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you want to talk? We've both been noodling on AI assisted, things, you on the tech side and me on the marketing side. You want to talk about some of that stuff?
Yeah. So I was going to, when I was last in Austin, I visited you. We were kind of noodling on this idea. We talked about it with a couple of people around is SaaS going to get killed because AI can just generate new SaaS products entirely? And I think I touched on this on a prior pod. We were talking about GPT pilot. And so I went deep into that, and I was going to record a whole YouTube of it. Here's my experience and here's what to expect. But I found it to be really boring. 90% of what I was doing was waiting for it to type code really slowly. But yeah, I'd love to share my experience from a high level of GPT pilot evaluation. So I used it for something really simple. We have had an existing contact form that's used on Scout that people embed in their site, and that's already been built. And I was like, okay, what if we want to replace this? I wanted to add some features, and I had a very clear spec, and it was as follows. It was build a Node.js based contact form that hits an endpoint. So there's no server. It's just a front end thing. Write it in Vue.js, make it so I can embed it into anyone's website or a WordPress site, and, have a short version and a long version. And, I was very detailed. So let me back up a step. So the way GPT pilot works is essentially uses GPT-4 or any of the OpenAI or You can actually plug in other models to it, other large language models into it, such as your own. Well, actually, I'm not so sure if it do your own, but you can plug in a bunch of different ones. I used OpenAI's because it's easiest and I already have an account. And what it does is it breaks the development process into roles, and it kind of sets up the first role, which is like the product manager, and they gather the requirements and ask the questions. And then that role passes it to the software architect, and the software architect comes up with, well, it should be written in this, with that, and that. And then they pass it to sort of the code monkey, and then their code monkey passes it to the code reviewer. And then finally, it kind of comes back to you as, hey, I wrote this code. Can you try it out? And so there's these checkpoints in which you kind of run through. So I'll get to the really, really short version of it. And I think like the one point that they put in their README in this project. So first of all, like the idea of segmentation is smart. That seems like a really novel use of like, I'm going to use GPTs individually because they're good, more concentrated. But until there's like AGI, like this tool set is just not going to be better. And so the short version is it's more expensive and takes longer to use this tool to build something like a contact form than it would be to use sort of like lower and cheaper labor on like Upwork. It certainly is faster to get started, but I'll go through a couple of the quick pitfalls. So we immediately started writing code. I spent time writing a spec, which I'd have to do with a human engineer anyways. I write this spec, I give it to GPT. I'm using specifics, but I missed maybe one. I said Vue.js, right? And in Vue.js, there's multiple versions. There's Vue 1, 2, and 3. And I believe current version is 3, right? I could be wrong, off by 1, but like it immediately started writing this, unbeknownst to me, using Vue version 2. And it starts layering more stuff. And I'm like, oh, once I did the first code review on my end, I started looking at the requirements. I'm like, shit, this thing, it's written a bunch of code in the wrong version. And that's kind of like, as you see with GPT, it's using stuff that it's been trained on. So it was trained on the older version. So like, you have to know these things. And so there's already this level of expertise where even if I was less technical and I didn't really know the difference between Vue versions, it was going to build something that immediately out of the gate is going to have deprecated parts, security issues, and mind you, it's just a contact form. It's not a big deal, but it just immediately came to me as like, oh, this is like an easy way to waste a lot of time and money. So I want to talk about the other part of this, which is you use a lot of API requests in this. So you have 4 or 5 roles that are kind of kicking messages back to each other and engaging themselves in using tokens, and you are charged by the tokens. By the end of this project, I ended up with a contact form that was like barely usable. Like I could have written, I spent almost about an hour and a half working back and forth, letting it write, reviewing its work. And I was doing something else while it was doing, because I'd wait for the prompt to come back. So I don't want to say I'm like staring at it, watching, but I'm confident I could have either written it myself in an hour and a half without, bumping into like, hey, I know that I shouldn't use the old version of Vue.js. And that was just one bump of many that kind of came up. And then I'm ending up with something that's like, I went back, got us to use Vue.js 3, the latest version, and it kind of got through it, but it still was kind of semi-functional and kept having to go back. And so I guess the sum up here is it's slower and more expensive than what I would say if you went to the Philippines or maybe Eastern Europe to say, hey, I want to get this done. And, it may be like over the calendar time, it would have taken longer, but it definitely costs less. I mean, I racked up just in this short process, at least $20, $30 of fees against the API to get this thing going. So it was a little disappointing. That being said, it was also a little chilling. It definitely had that moment of like, oh my God, this thing is smart enough that it's talking to itself and working out problems. But, overall grade, I would give it as like maybe a D. If it was a human delivering that code result or that product, I would not have hired them. And I definitely wouldn't have paid them $30 to build a silly contact form. So anyways, that's the sort of quick and dirty result of it. I was debating kind of recording and kind of publishing and editing all this stuff, but it really was a mind-numbingly boring process. So I don't think it's interesting enough to publish to YouTube.
I mean, it's interesting because this is the worst it's ever going to be. And it's already somewhat compelling and increasing at like an amazing rate.
Yes. So the thing that I don't, so somebody asked point blank answer as of right now, until we get to AGI, SaaS businesses are safe. But even still, I think there's going to be a fair amount of like, you're going to get to a junction and you're going to make a decision, or it's going to make a decision. It's going to make the wrong one. And if, as you work backwards, the cost of that decision being wrong, the closer that decision was to the beginning of the project, the more costly it's going to be to go back and change it, the more time that's going to be wasted. So it is interesting and compelling. I'm excited, for the future when we can leverage it. But for right now, the way I leverage it is the way I recommend to you to leverage it, which is like, give it the right questions and don't expect it to do too much. So writing my code is for me, that's off limits. I don't want it writing my code. There's just a lot more errors and hallucinations versus like, hey, how do I do this specific thing? And can we work through a problem together? And then I'll apply it and be sort of the thing transposing the eventual solution into my code.
Nice. Yeah, it's been the most effective for me trying to analyze data and not like giving it data and say, analyze this. It's like, how do I make a new column that analyzes, this big list of transaction data? Sometimes like an Excel or Google Sheet wizard when I, am certainly not or wasn't before. I mean, that would have taken me forever looking at help docs, trying to figure out, certain things like that. And then you can just keep saying like, hey, break it down more for me. Like, this is still too confusing. What does each piece here mean? So that's been great. One mutual friend of ours who runs a growing vertical software company has been generating a ton of AI articles. And he says it's just been great for growing his SEO and getting free trials and everything. And so he gave me like his rough playbook. And so I've been testing it out. He uses Byword to generate these articles. So it's byword.ai. And it costs like $3 or so for each article. And you can easily generate, 30 articles, high quality ones in an hour. And so there's different ways of approaching it. Like the most devilish way is to look at your biggest competitors and their best SEO pages and just grab all of those URLs. And you could give it to Byword and say like, generate better articles of these. And it'll go check out those articles and write, headline, subheadline, all that stuff. And then it will also interlink all your articles and queue them up to be published to Webflow and also generate a new unique image. So I've done it maybe like 30 to 50 across a few different sites. And you already see them ranking relatively quickly on Google Search Console. So you see them like, it's really good for generic things. So a lot of stuff around dog walking is pretty solid, but it doesn't have like super unique data or anything like that. So like our success stories or like customer testimonials, those are still best done by people. But I guess we'll see whether it actually delivers results. It's already delivering clicks, and I assume some of those clicks are worthwhile. And everyone seems to be doing it, so I don't think Google's going to slap down every website in existence. It's just probably the new world we're living in, and there's like some kind of arbitrage opportunity over the next few years of publishing a bunch of articles. And as long as you high enough domain authority, you're going to be ranking, and there isn't that much competition for like some of these kind of longer TL keywords.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would like to think that all of this AI stuff generally is trash. Like I see a lot of content on LinkedIn that people I can tell are generating or like heavily leveraging it. And it's like, you just lose their voice. But if you don't know the person or, I think for that kind of content, I also don't think people are really reading these articles. I think they're skimming them, bullet pointing them, trying to find that call to action, trying to find a specific answer to a specific question. And, we've all seen trash articles written by humans. So I'm sure there's a way to tell, this is likely generated based on like the cadence or the writing style or whatever. But, is it just going to create a bunch of trash is concern, right? That's, I guess, Google's concern. They start ranking trash articles. But from your perspective, does it read like trash? Does it read bad? Does it read useless? Or is it, it still adds value?
So you can make sure it reads well. So you could dictate the writing style. So like for ours, I did professional, engaging, and academic. And so that actually reads quite well. it doesn't look like it's AI generated at all. I mean, it looks like it was written by some SEO expert because it's like a beautiful headline, subheadline, like the perfect format to make everything super readable. And then it's like, does this stuff deliver value? And I think at some of the, simple high level topics, it certainly does. Like anything related to definitions or like, I don't know, how do you create a dog walking flyer? And you could have 5 steps in there. Someone is actually looking at how do you create a dog walking flyer to like grow your business. And it probably is relatively helpful. It'd be more helpful if it got more detailed and like went through the actual process, but it doesn't have that, advanced capabilities. But I think it's enough to give people like, the Scout thing is like maybe interesting. I'm going to poke around a little bit more and not like, oh, this is complete junk. I, was tricked into clicking this link.
Yeah. Right. Cool. Well, I mean, it's such a cool topic. And as you point out, like this is the worst it's going to be. I'm really bullish on obviously it as a category, but I'm really bullish on the idea of fine tuning or building your own custom models. And I've been doing that in other domains, less so large language models, but and it gets back to this problem of like, hey, you need the data to train the model. And so organizing your data and thinking about how you're going to train a model, you need to have a statistical significance. You got to have, thousands upon thousands of records to say, this is the prompt, this is the response, or this is the thing, and this is what I expect to be predicted. So, I think as we look at deals, as we look at new businesses, that is, or even our own businesses, that's always kind of an interesting thing of like, okay, well, what information do we have? What information could we use to train? And are we structuring it in a way that it's accessible? So that's always kind of a fun thing to be thinking through.
Yeah, that would be the compelling argument for like all the vertical market software companies. Not that they're just going to be recreated in AI and be super competitive, but like what kind of unique data do they have? And then you could leverage with AI models.
Yeah. I think that's where I'd like to spend more time in the coming year.
Oh, sweet. I know you got to run quickly here. Anything else you want to cover quick?
No, we'll talk about, I did a book report. I'll publish it and we can talk about it on the next one, but wanted to get something on record, on tape.
I have this one quick story since we have like a minute left here. So I started getting into tennis and I got into it because my parents were moving out of my childhood home and like giving away a bunch of stuff. And on the pile was a few tennis rackets. I was like, I'll salvage these and maybe I'll get into tennis someday. So I started getting into it more and more. I've been playing with these rackets and getting them like restrung and everything. And I took a lesson in Austin and the guy's like, you have a weird swing. Let me see your racket. And it turns out I've been playing with a racket designed for old ladies for like 2 years now. And it's
amazing.
A swing where I basically like pull back because it's designed to give old women more power so they can get the ball over the court. And so, he handed me a men's racket and a men's racket is like, I don't know, 2 to 3 times the weight and way thinner. It looks like, a child's toy versus like a real tennis racket.
So did you buy a men's racket?
I do. I now am playing with a men's racket and it's
good.
Amazing. The game is so much easier. Yeah.
I bet. That's great to hear. Yeah. How is it the strings that are giving it more sort of like bounce?
It's both. Strings are designed differently, but like you can mix and match strings. And then the weight is different. And then like the racket is, I think, stiffer and substantially heavier.
Nice.
It's probably like 3 times the weight. Yeah, it is wild. But anyway, that was just my little bit.
Cool. Well, hey, it was good to chat. Thanks for listening, everybody. And talk to you guys soon.
Yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.